Welcome everybody to this final session, and to kick this off I want to introduce David Doet, who is chairing this session, and he's from the Catholic University of Lille. David.
It's a joy for me to chair this plenary session and to introduce Pieter VERMAAS. In 1998, Pieter VERMAAS joined the Ethics and Philosophy of Technology Department of Delft University of Technology after obtaining his PhD on the philosophy of quantum mechanics at the Institute for History and Foundations of Science of Utrecht University. In Delft, he helped creating the dual nature of technical artifacts research program, in which technical artifacts were analyzed as having both structural and intentional natures, with functions playing an important role in relating these natures. From 2006 to 2010, he researched with a NWO VIDI fellowship the use of functions and functional decompositions in engineering design methods. In the past few years, Pieter VERMAAS focused on design processes in engineering and architecture, analyzing design methods for understanding what design is and for validating design methods. He helped launching the TU Delft Institute for Design for Values in 2017, and its aim to further the incorporation of moral, societal, and legal values in technology through design is a key focus for Pieter VERMAAS' research on design methods. Currently, he is returning to a theme that was already at the very heart of his PhD, quantum mechanics, by engaging in a reflection on the philosophical and ethical issues of quantum technology. As such, he participates in the Tech Ethos project, an ambitious project supported by the European Union, which aims to address the growing ethical challenges and expectations regarding new and emerging technologies by working with researchers, civil society organizations, research ethics committees, policymakers, and the general public, to capture and develop societal awareness on these technologies. Pieter VERMAAS has published a lot of international books and articles. You can easily find his bibliography on the internet. I would not dare to mention one of them to the detriment of the others, and I will not go down that road as the time of my chair speech must stay short. I would indeed regret to lack time to tell you that Pieter, among his many editorial and institutional responsibilities in our field of research, has for the last 2 years been the president of our Society for Technology and Society and Philosophy. A lot of promising work for our community has started under his presidency and will continue under his successor. A huge thank you to you, dear Pieter, and without further delay, I leave you the floor to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for those kind words. It's a pleasure to be in Lille. I'm physically in Lille. Most of us have been here online in Lille. Well, I'm physically here in Lille, and I'm very grateful to the Catholic University of Lille for enabling that. It's also, of course, a bit of a sad moment because it's the last session in this conference, so we have to say goodbye after this. Yes, and I've been for 2 years president of the SPT, and that was a pleasure. My first contribution to the SPT was actually also organizing the big SPT conference. That was in 2005 in Delft. And we were so proud that because it was such a massive success at that time. We had 3 keynotes. We had 81 papers and, mind you, 135 participants. So and it was baffling at that time. But now, yeah, of course, what you organized here, 5 keynotes, about 400 papers, 450 participants. Wow. The field has been growing and is still growing. Also on the dimension of publishing, much has changed in that 16 years. SPT has his own journal, Techne, really proud. We published it ourselves back then, and it was an internet journal. Great, so that was the general outlet for our field. But now that also evolved to general journals, many more on specific topics. And moreover, what has changed is that publishers know what philosophy of technology is. When I first contacted publishers, they said, what is it? Is it philosophy of science or is it philosophy of architecture? We know that, but we don't know philosophy of technology. Well, that has changed too. You can choose from different book series which are running, and a publisher is now, I think, happy to receive you if you have work to publish. What also changed, and I want to talk about that, is a kind of development. It's a gradual development, but it's substantial. There has been a shift in these 16 years from, let's say, the standard default mode of philosophy, technology, namely to look at technology, analyze what's going on, and having critical stance to that. That's what we all can do, and that was, what also in this conference, hey, you could witness a lot. What was added to that, or what grew in volume, was what I would like to call a constructive philosophy of technology. And that is that we, or some of us, are actively engaged in policy making, ethical policy making, or design for values. David mentioned it. We are sometimes even involved in actually shaping technology. So we added a constructive element to it. In the previous keynote, the European regulation for AI was mentioned. Well, that's a policy where also some of us contribute to that. It's great. In the introduction, David also mentioned that I do it myself in that program, Tech Ethos, looking at, for instance, quantum technologies, trying to develop methodology to that we can, for such emerging technologies, identify future ethical, legal, social issues, and even come up with some regulation for that. That's what I also am doing, so it's becoming part of it, and I think that development comes with a consequence. It's great, but it comes with a consequence. And that's what I want to argue for today. I want to argue that we should be clear, if we do it, constructive philosophy of technology, how we do it, and tell that to society. We should be transparent as a field of how we develop these policies and even co-shape individual technologies. The short argument is, we argued in the last 2 decades that engineers should have codes of ethics to become accountable. Also linked to the previous keynote, to become accountable, transparent. Well, we are now engineers ourselves to some extent, so maybe it's time for a code of conduct for us. It's a short argument. I give the long argument because we're philosophers. So for the long argument, I want to draw from two sources. Langdon's Winner's paper, seminal paper, Do Artifacts Have Politics, and my own research in design. Starting with Langdon Winner. We all know that paper, I guess, and let's say the main message is, again, an analytical, critical message. If you look at technology, developers, engineers, designers, policymakers, industrialists, he shows that they do politics if they choose specific technologies. And they do it sometimes deliberately, they might do it unintentionally, but they do it. The challenge which comes from that analysis, and now we're moving to constructive mode, is to say, okay, well, if that's the case, how should we respond as a society? And the response is, well, find ways to get that policy making related to technology back to society. Let society co-shape those policies. Good challenge. In a sense, the constructive mode in philosophy of technology is doing that. There's another domain in which this challenge of Langdon Winner is taken up, and that's design and engineering. And there, again, you can see a more restrictive and a more constructive approach. One of the approaches to involve society into engineering, technology development was those codes of ethics. We wanted that engineers become clear about what kind of values they have, what kind of commitments they have, and they should tell that to society. And they should inform society about what the impact of technologies would be if they work on something, ask for consent, informed consent. That's one approach. Another approach is participatory design, started in Scandinavia, 1970s. Another attempt to get society into the policy making associated with technology. So all the stakeholders involved should join the technology development such that it becomes, in a sense, a democratic process. Technology assessment, let's assess that impact up front of a technology such that we enable society to say no or yes. And so if we know what the technology will do, we enable the policy making in society. Modern forms of that are responsible innovation, value-sensitive design, all attempts to get stakeholders in some way on the table when engineers, designers develop their technologies. Great attempts. What you can also find in design, and that's part of my study, is approaches which more actively try to design for society. Design thinking, that's the approach which emerged in Stanford University, the D School you have there, developed by a design firm called IDEO. It's an approach of designing where you try to be innovative. Think about Steve Jobs, Apple. You try to be innovative, to do something really new by looking very deeply about how people use technology and what kind of problems they have. And so David has now a problem with typing on a chair. His laptop might slide. And in design thinking, you try to really think like David. How does he do that? And then solve his problem. So again, you look at stakeholders. And you try to be close to them, empathy, is the key word there. Social design, nudging you probably know, but there's also a development called social design where designers explicitly say, okay, we're not anymore commercial designers, we have done that, but if society decides for certain goals, values, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for instance, we will design for that. Explicitly. Well, nudging is a kind of similar approach. Also attempts to get the policy making part of design and technology out to society. Good. But if you look more closely at these approaches, you see also a kind of tension that these more constructive approaches actually violate elements of the more restrictive approaches, specifically codes of conduct. For instance, design thinking. Design thinking is aimed at innovation. So, of course, you look at stakeholders to see how you can help them, but you also look at specific stakeholders. You don't look at the average man or woman in the street, because, yeah, if you ask them or try to imagine what they would like, they want to have a little bit of improvement here or there. That doesn't lead to innovation. But you look at youngsters or people who are really happy with technology, and you try to solve their problems, because these are future-oriented stakeholders, and they can show you what the future has in stock. Well, if you see that element of stakeholders, you see of design thinking, you see that it's quite different to participatory design. It doesn't involve all stakeholders, only those the designers wants to look at. Moreover, it doesn't inform society about what the impact of that technology is. More strongly, it is sometimes used as an argument for innovation that we don't know what the impact is, because it's a game changer. It will open a trajectory of new technologies. We don't know what that trajectory will lead to, but if you want to be future directed, you better be part of it, because here's the money, here's the new things. So it violates also that element of code of ethics that engineers should inform and ask consent about what is being done. Social design and nudging, yet both approaches also violate sometimes codes of ethics, because it is sometimes in these approaches convenient not to inform stakeholders what is designed for. The classical example of nudging is the cafeteria. You have a cafeteria in a restaurant. So you have a restaurant, you can design a restaurant, the display of the food, the way in which you have to walk through the... well, you can design restaurants in such a way that people don't eat so much and don't eat unhealthy food. One trick is to just give smaller plates, because the designers know that people will just, in a cafeteria, if you're on a line, you just put as much on your plate as possible. Well, if you have a smaller plate, you eat less. That is also quite good, so that obesity is being battled by this approach. But you can't tell to the customer that this trick is being done. Because what would happen if a bunch of students would walk into that cafeteria or that restaurant and say, here you get a small plate such that you don't eat so much and you won't choose the hamburger. Well, what they will do is say, well, I'm autonomous, I'll hack the system. I took 2 plates. And I search a bit longer and I find that hamburger anyway. So social design nudging sometimes prospers by not informing users what is designed for. Again, that is a violation of codes of ethics. If I ask designers about this, social designers, a response may be say, yeah, of course we don't need to inform customers because we design for socially good values. It's social design, so it's social. How can I be not social? And we have the knowledge in stock, so we work with experts in sociology, psychology, so we can do that. Well, even if that argument holds, then it drives us straight back into the analysis of Langdon-Winner, namely that you have a group of designers, engineers, who act like experts, and in this case even deliberately design technology for a certain policy while not sharing it so much with society. I would argue that if we want to stick to, let's say, our first approach to engineering, and we want to stick to this idea that we should bring policy making related to technology back into society, well, then the designers should start to be transparent about what they do. Tell society that they design for certain values, tell how they do it, and also allow, in terms of accountability, previous keynote, to be criticized by society. Maybe society doesn't like it, or some groups don't like it. For that, engineering design, or design thinking, social design, should become transparent as a first step toward accountability. Okay, I talked a lot about designers, but I guess you already knew that actually I was thinking about the philosophers. Because also there, if we, in our constructive mode, start to design policies, we even design technologies themselves with our expertise, and we say, well, of course that is good, because we're ethicists. So how can we be unethical? Because we're ethicists. Even if that argument holds, and I think it brings us back to Langdon-Winner, that we have a group of people, we ourselves, who do politics but don't share that in the societal domain. Let me immediately say that this is not a criticism of individual people who are involved in policy making, policy development, because for sure we are sensitive to this. And so we do involve stakeholders and we can tell how we do policy making. The point is rather, we should be transparent about it as a field. We should be transparent about it also to become accountable for it. So that society or the European Commission or the US government or whomever can say, well, yeah, join the enterprise, but tell me what you do. Show me what your criteria are. Who is good? Who is less good? Can I disagree with what you do? Can I have a discussion with you about that? Well, that's my argument. We, as a philosopher, as a field, when we do constructive philosophy of technology, I think it's time that we explain, tell society how we do that. Of course, I was also thinking about SPTs. This is my personal opinion. There is a link with what SPT is doing, and I'll tell that in a minute. But I think SPT would be a good venue to do these kinds of work. But it's a point I have in mind myself. And if it sticks, it might be something SPT could do. But in the second part of my presentation, when I talk about SPT itself, I'll come back, make a brief link. For here, I want to end with this statement. And thank you for listening to it.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your thoughts and reflections about this huge change that you observe in the way society is looking at philosophers of technologies and as ethicists. And we were used to be looked like scholars reflecting on theoretical issues and as being people trying to understand societal issues and so on, but we were used to be looked by society as people not in the action, not in the policy making. And now there is a request from important institutional policy makers to engage in these policy making processes regarding new technologies. And this shift is quite recent in some ways, and it puts on our shoulders a lot of responsibility. And you say that given this responsibility and given this shift, we have more than ever the duty to be transparent, to become accountable, and to be very explicit in the way we work, in the way which method we use, and so on. But to which point are we legitimate to agree with the representation the society puts upon us, upon our role? In which, how to justify the reply we can address to society? Is it sufficient to be transparent, or is the attempt from society not too high? Are we the right person to work to respond to this request from society, or are we a part of the response?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you for it. No, the position which I defend is definitely just the first step. It says more about what we should do, namely be explicit about the criteria which we put on our work in order to, and communicate that to the outside world, in order to have that debate. And indeed, also the outcome of that debate might be to say, okay, well, if you philosophers do this, then please leave the building, because we don't want that. That might be a possibility. Yeah, I have to think about the previous keynote, so by Deborah Johnson, which says that the notion of accountability is not central, but it's a practice which should develop around interventions which define then that practice, how accountability is arranged. But I would not know how that where that ends. The point is where just the central point which I use here is we as philosophers have to some extent become engineers ourselves. We can do that, so it's not that I am against it. So we have so much analytic power to understand processes, that we are now able to also change these processes. You had technology assessment, purely analytic, but then the next step was constructive technology assessment. And that meant, okay, we're going to work with the people who we analyze. We can do that, I believe in that, but then we have to acknowledge that we have become, it sounds a bit odd, engineers ourselves. How it will evolve, that's step one, how it will evolve, I'm curious myself. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Peter, for your very programmatic speech, which is, I find, challenging for the whole community, in fact, philosopher of technology. I have a little short question. In fact, the relationship you described between philosophy and technology reminded me the approach of a philosopher of science, a French philosopher of science, Thomas Pradot, who talks about philosophy in biology. Should we also talk no more about philosophy of technology and talk about philosophy in technology? What do you think about it?
Yeah, that could be an outcome. I would keep that analytic element. We've been. I'm now in France. I talk with lots of the few the French philosophers who are here on site. I talk with them and I see, the main tradition is still analytic, and great. Let's keep that. So I also cherish that ivory tower, that distant perspective, that we can go into a critical mode. So stick to the label philosophy of technology, but acknowledge that we have a mode, increasingly bigger mode of co-shaping technology. I guess it's not fully new, because throughout the times there always have been philosophers who said, okay, we should do this with technology. But at this time, it's just, in some domains, really a systematic effort, and quite practical. No, so I stick to the label. We'll stay philosophers of technology, and we retreat if necessary.
I agree.
Another question. So to build this transparency, to build this accountability, we know that in the field of philosophy of technology, we are there are plural visions and plural currents of thoughts and a big diversity. When facing society and with this address from society calling us to take part to policy making and to involve ourselves in action, should we, as a community, as a worldwide community, become more unified regarding some key ethical points? Should we, which kind of strategy should we develop in building this transparency? Because we could imagine that we could have many diverse visions on these questions of how to be transparent, which methods to make more explicit, and should we look for kind of broader unity? Is it something that we should do, or should we preserve our diversity and let it develop in diverse directions when we speak to society?
Thanks. It's a good point. And when I read the outcomes of that policy advices, or what it's over the top to say that it is written by philosophers of technology, but it's philosophers of technology contribute to say, hey, that directive on AI. If I read that, then it said, hey, this is pretty simplified. I think if I go to a conference, say SPT conference, we battle about that. We don't have consensus about AI or how to deal with it. But then, yeah, in that on the level of policy making, yeah, there's just one decision coming out, and that's a bit too short. So what I would not go into the direction. Okay, we should now indeed simplify our field and decide as a group. Okay, as a field, this is what we all think about accountability or AI or quantum technology or whatever. Transparency, I think in this case means that we should share with the outside world that there are different schools, that there is no consensus between us, so that if you hire your philosopher to give you advice, be aware, well, you hired a consequentialist or you hired whomever. And so be aware that we come in flavors. We cherish that. It's our strength, but we do come in flavors. So that, again, I would say it's a transparency issue. The accountability, how that would evolve, well, we have to ask Deborah Johnson. Maybe she can predict how that practice will evolve. But yeah, not important. We should be transparent about our lack of our diverse views.
Immaculada, come on the scene.
Thank you. So I think that, you know, I agree with you about the importance of transparency, but I agree with some of the comments that David had made about the difficulties of transparency. So I'm going to add a little bit more of difficulty. So one is that transparency about methods and commitments and responsibilities, you know, seems relatively easy to do, but most of those things have undergrounding values that might be very difficult to identify for ourselves. So we might have difficulties determining what exactly those values might be. So one of the concerns is that transparency might just be up here, but not at the level that it needs to be, which is about values and disagreements about them. So that's one concern. The other is about the reason for transparency seems to be that people then can do something about it. Now I have that knowledge, and if I disagree with you, I can. But that involves questions about power. And it seems that transparency is not going to address that problem either. I know that you said, of course, you're not trying to solve all of the problems, but just something that seems relevant for, you know, your claim about transparency is a good way to go.
Yeah. Now, okay, fair enough. What I propose is not a kind of simple issue of adding an element to the field, some administrative stuff. But let's say, if you take the example of engineering and their codes of conduct, yeah, it's just a bunch of articles. It's not psychology. It's not metaphysics. So sure, there might be values under our commitments, and we can write books about those values and the relation. But in terms of giving society or stakeholders in society a handle to understand what we do and intervene in what we do, disagree with it, what we do, we have to, yeah, let's say these service values, let's write them down. Then we have a start. And yeah, I don't like this idea of saying, yeah, can't do that because there's much more deeper values. So that takes me another it's a complex issue on to make that transparent. And then we flip back into that analytic mode, say, yeah, so we're experts, we can't explain it to you. Now, I think we should take a chunk which we can explain and start explaining it.
Right. Sorry. But the
Yeah.
issue is not that you don't want to. I'm not gonna do this because this is much more complicated. It's just simply recognizing that the transparency that we are doing is not all the transparency that we might need.
Sure. Yeah. No. There will be definitely a limit to transparency. The point about power, I would reverse that. As long as we are not transparent, but we act as experts to say, hey, we can tell you what is ethical with respect to this technology, we take some power position and we don't allow the others to have a battle with us, or agree or disagree, or maybe even have more power than us and say, well, then we don't like it. No, I'm open for that process of balancing the power relations. And you could see this position as saying, well, we should stop to take a power position by saying we are just experts and we're ethical, so therefore whatever we do is good. Sure, it's a bumpy road ahead.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your thoughts on this discussion. And now it's time to turn to something else, Richard.
Yes, thank you, Peter. So now we have some very exciting announcements, things like where will the next SPT conference be held, and we had some elections a while back. Who won them? So I'll give the floor back to Peter.
This is a bit of a bipolar element of a presidential address. So I was doing philosophy, and now I'm just doing administration. Hopefully also challenging administration. Namely, I'm going to tell some stuff which we have done as executive board in the last 2 years. Saying something about our new mission and our goals, and then also talk about people who have been active, and then indeed the new people who have been elected to shape SPT in the future. Well, this was the executive board for these last 2 years. You have here the pictures. I won't name them all. What I can name is that Chen Zhu was a new addition quite in the beginning, our new treasurer, and right in the beginning, Ashley Xu and Kirk Besmer joined as the new editors of Tecne. Really happy that they were there. They are now already experienced editors-in-chief of Tecne. What we've done, apart from the regular business, I won't bore you with the regular business, is to, in a sense, try to figure out what SPT should do in the 21st century. We have these wonderful big conferences. We have them every 2 years. We have Tecne as a journal. We offer that as a service, but we realized that we could offer more. We could support the field much more in terms of on the level of the whole field, maybe supporting conferences on topics or in regions. So maybe a philosophy of technology conference in France, such things we would like to do too, and improve our services to our membership, also on an individual basis. Under the mediating expertise of Heather Wiltse, who was on the board, we used a year to think about what our goals are of SPT. And here they are. You can also find them on the SPT site. What I, in brief, can say is that we, as a field, think that we should offer, as a society, we should, for the field, offer much more services to our members. Also, in the gaps in between the two, between the big conferences, and that we should also, do a better job in finding recognition for the field. So we have our journals now, and we can publish, but still, there's a feeling that we should improve on that. That has led to goal setting that we should, as a field, become much more outgoing to other fields, so in academia, maybe philosophy of science, technical domains, to invite them to have interactions in order to, share and also learn. We want to also become relevant much more for policy making, and we want to also make ourselves known to the general public. Well, here these bluely highlighted terms. Here you can see if you go outside, then the position I defended, which is not the SPT position, but my personal position is to say, well, if we do that, we have to be explicit who we are. We have to show what we do, how we do it, in order to also enable our the partners on the other side to decide and to respond to what we can do. We also have values defined for SPT, which also reflect both that we want to become a more active community who supports members. So we have values like community, inclusivity, but we also have values which say, okay, we want to go out and make ourselves more known. So relevance and interdisciplinarity. The first year of the 2 years I have been at SPT as president was used for this. The second year we started to implement plans to realize that. We made part of TECNA open access, not fully open access, but the back issues are now open access. They're not behind a wall of SPT membership. And we started relevance to have more rapid publications made available on societal relevant topics. Moreover, INA has on this conference organized events as a service to SPT members to meet the more experienced professors, to learn from their experience. And last week I organized an event where members and others could join, could learn from journal editors how to better publish, how to maximize your chances. There's more to be coming, but I will not tell that. It comes later in this presentation, what our future plans are as SPT. Well, as part of, and I'm going to talk about people, it's much more interesting. As part of this community building, again mention the award winners, Deborah Johnson, Carl Mitchum. Really happy to to have them at this conference and to acknowledge their contributions to the field. So congratulations, very much deserved to have these achievement awards. In addition to the renowned scholars, we also have had awards for 2 papers given at this conference. Mark Young, Early Career Award, and Orana Kyle, the Great Student Paper Award. So we're also very happy that we had them, and we hope that in the next few years we hear a lot about their future research. Looking forward. Then building towards the elections. So this was the board for the last 2 years. 3 people will leave. Mark Kuckelberg was from 2017 to 2019 the president of SPT. He served another 2 years as the past president. Was still very active, also here at the conference, chairing and helping out. So Mark, thanks very much for your leadership and for what you have done for SPT. Second, José Luis Garcia, an elected member of the board, will leave after a period on the board. He was the one who organized yet another SPT conference in 2013 in Lisbon. So also an important contribution to the field. Thanks for that to José Luis. Then, who is also going to leave, and his picture is a bit bigger, is John Sullings. And that was a board member secretary who for already 23 years. So he was kind of the, he was the backbone of SPT. So the board changed, presidency changed, but one person remained in office and was the continuity to the society. So this is John Sullings is Mr. SPT, you could call him like that. And to pay tribute to that, we have made a little video made by Shannon Veller, another old SPT president, who says some words about John Sullings. Could you please switch on that?
Hi, SPT. It's former SPT President Shannon Veller. And hello, John Sullings. As a colleague and friend who served on the board of SPT with you for many years, I want to congratulate you on concluding your term of office as Secretary-Treasurer of SPT. You might have served the longest term of office of any SPT board member. During your term as Secretary-Treasurer, you not only wisely stewarded our finances, but you advised us on how to grow internationally, how to better serve and engage our membership, and provided invaluable input to every SPT conference during your term. You've left SPT in a very good place, with the philosophy of technology more visible and active internationally than it's ever been. We would not be where we are without you. And on behalf of the SPT board and the entire SPT community, I want to thank you for your service and dedication.
Wow, yeah. John, we're going to miss you. That anchor in the organization is now is not available anymore. So thanks again. Let's move to the next period. So we have had elections. SPT members, you chose among candidates for the board, and you made your choice for the new president-elect. In the meantime, SPT Executive Board also has appointed a successor to John Sellings. So 3 new names on the SPT organization is that Vincent Blok and Olja Kudina are elected as for 4 years as new members on the board. There are great additions to the board. I think Vincent Blok had the most papers on this conference, so his energy, also the energy of Olja Kudina, is, yeah, we can use that on the board, so welcome. Glenn Miller has accepted the appointment as successor of secretary, so he also for 4 years will serve in that role. Glenn Miller is actually the one who organized the previous SPT conference in Texas, so much experience. So we're happy to also have you on the board, Glenn. Then, yeah, the big final countdown, the cliffhanger. Who did you chose as the new president-elect? President-elect means that in 2 years' time, this person will become the president. Well, that is Robert Rosenberger. Robert Rosenberger will be, after this conference, the president-elect. And I think SPT can be really happy and grateful with having him as the president. He was part of that process. He was already on the board, part of that process of defining a new mission, vision. So there's a continuity here, meaning that when Robert is in business, we indeed will have probably made lots of steps towards that better services for SPT. That means that the board will look after this conference like this with the 3 new additions, and that also means that I have moved to the position of past president. So actually I'm digging my grave with this presentation, so when I've done, then I am not the president of SPT anymore, because that will be Immaculada de Melo Martin, who is also here. So in a symbolic way, I would like to now offer you the cathedral to take over SPT.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here. I am very happy to be the next president, or the current president actually right now. I have been honored to work with Pieter and everybody else on the board, and I'm certainly happy to continue working with the new board members. The SPT was actually the first professional conference I attended as a graduate student, so I have special affection for this society. And I'm going to just talk for a few minutes. Pieter mentioned that we have been thinking about what our future plans will be. So these are some of the things that we are planning to do. We are planning, our desire is actually to implement, to try to implement the values that Pieter just discussed. And we want to do so particularly by trying to engage the membership. So we have a variety of things that we are trying to do together with the board to try to engage the membership more than has been possible. So Pieter mentioned our desire to actually increase our presence in other conferences. to do panels and sessions at cognate societies, for example, would be one of the ways in which we do that. By trying to get the members to propose panels for these other conferences, but also by organizing perhaps conferences in the middle of the year. So we have our big conferences every 2 years, so perhaps do something every other year so that people can still be engaged and can meet with other members who are also interested in similar topics. We are planning to revamp our website so that people can actually find things easily. And one of the things that we will do is actually to develop a directory, a membership directory, that people would be able to search by different categories, so that people actually have a chance to meet with other or engage with other members in easier ways. So that's another thing that we are going to try to do. We are going to also increase the information that we have on our website to share educational materials for people who might be new to philosophy of technology. They might not know exactly what to teach or what readings to use. So we are actually going to also try to improve the website in that regard. We will again. We welcome any suggestions that the members might have about how we can actually try to improve this engagement, to increase our engagement with each other and the presence of philosophy of technology both in the profession and in society. So thank you, Pieter, and fortunately, as I had told him before, he's not going anywhere, so that's a good thing. The future, sorry, the future. Yes. So yes, now we are going to tell you where the conference, where next conference is going to be. I completely forgot. So yes, in 1, 2, 3.
Hello, everyone. We are honored to be nominated as the host city for the next conference. SPT 2023 will be the first face-to-face meeting after the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope to invite you all to the next SPT meeting in Tokyo. Tokyo is a global hub for business and academia. It is a hub for people, things, information, and so much more that keeps the bustling economy moving. Tokyo is easily accessible by air from around the world. Tokyo is a safe and attractive city, combining the traditional Japanese culture with the newest technologies and pop culture. Participants can enjoy the original culture of Japan. It is our tradition to integrate different cultures and philosophies. Contemporary cultures and cutting-edge technologies encourage our thinking on living well in the 21st century. In philosophy of technology, we also have a unique tradition, beginning from Nishida and Miki in the pre-war era to contemporary philosophers. Tokyo is an ideal platform for free dialogue, in which each of us encounters various philosophical traditions, diverse ways of thinking, and peculiar viewpoints different from our own.
The host organization for the conference is the Japanese Society for Science and Technology Studies, in cooperation with Japan Association for the Contemporary and Applied Philosophy, Japan Association for Philosophy of Science. JSSCS has a robust international network, and it pushes the collaboration of philosophy of technology with other empirical disciplines worlds. conference theme is technology and mobility. AI and self-driving car are bringing a new situation. Technologies not only expand the range of our movement, but also significantly changes the way we move itself. What does it mean for people to move and meet in person? And how does technology connect people? The Bern is National Olympics Memorial Youth Center, NYC. NYC is a social education facility built on the site of the former athletes' village after the closing of the 1964 Olympics. NYC is located close to the city center and of good transportation. NYC is near Shinjuku, which is about 30 minutes by bus from Haneda International Airport and about 80 minutes by train from Narita, another international airport. The center is located in Tokyo, but is surrounded by lush greenery, making it an ideal place for philosophical discussions. Besides conference rooms, NYC has accommodation facilities at reasonable prices, which would be convenient for everyone, especially for young researchers.
We are looking forward to seeing you again in Tokyo.
Yes, we'll meet in 2 years' time in Tokyo. I do hope that we will meet physically in Tokyo. This conference here in Lille has been amazing because it allowed us to still connect, although we were isolated in our countries. We are allowed to travel, but some of our universities don't cover it. So this was an online conference, and of course we all hope that Tokyo will be a regular conference where we can meet and also have discussions in rooms and nice events outside of the room at night, and get socially again switched on. But still, Lille has done an amazing job. The Catholic University of Lille. So when the idea was born that we should have our next conference here, we all thought it was a physical conference, just a regular conference. Well, the Catholic University of Lille, in collaboration with the University of Technology of Compiègne, who helped organize this thing, they had to really rethink their plans and had to change quite quickly from, after also a period of uncertainty, can we have a hybrid conference? When that period of uncertainty was over, the dust went down, and it was clear that lots of work had to be done. And I think the Catholic University of Lille and University of Technology Compiègne did a marvelous job. So that will be in the annals of SPT as a great achievement where we should all be grateful too. Specifically, I would like to thank David Duat and Richard Lewis for pulling this off. You guys have done this, and where I, as past president, so it's past president, so it's a bit kind of nostalgic. When I was talking with David and Richard about how are things going, so I said, oh dear, these guys, they must suffer all the problems they have to solve. But they were also always in good spirits. They were always in good spirits. Yeah, we have done this already. We have done this. It will be marvelous, and we're going to try this as a new addition. I would like to hand over the floor to David Duat and Richard Lewis, and I want to, in addition to this thanks on behalf of SPT, also pay back in good spirits. So from my own country, I have brought some spirits and would like to offer it before I hand over the floor to you with a big applause.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sorry whether you leave in a week's time, but
It'll be a fun week.
Must be drunk before, so before you take the flight.
no, I'll take the. Okay. Here you are,
Thank
David.
you,
Many thanks to you both for pulling this off. It has been an amazing achievement. Yeah, you will collapse tonight, even without that bottle. But yeah, thanks again, and very much deserved to be honored for sure.
Thank you,
Peter. Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, Immaculada, new president. Xavier, can you join? So now we enter in a time of thanks and also recognition to all the people which have helped to build this conference. I give first the speech to Xavier.
Thank you very much, David. Well, I would like to thank you, first of all, the SPT and Pieter VERMAAS, its president, for making possible the organization of this event here in Lille, but perhaps in France as a country. We discussed about that yesterday, and it's very important for our little community of philosophers of technology to have this conference here, and it is an important step for us. Thank you very much, and so much to David and Richard for this incredible event, and for associating us, the University of Technology of Compiègne, to the organization of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Xavier. I call now Richard to join us. I would like also to ask to our webmaster and engineer in computer science, Olivier Boisard, to join the floor. Computer scientists and webmaster are always very discreet, so they like to be behind the scene, and I know it's a little bit difficult to come in full visibility and light, but you did a very great job, Olivier, in the organization of all this work. And if you have so much enjoyed the schedule, by instance, and all the tools on the website, especially the schedule is a coding work, a new coding work made by Olivier from zero. So thanks to our discussions and so on, because it was also a concept, but we had to make it operational, practical, and without Olivier, it wouldn't have been possible to propose you this tool like the schedule, to have access to the stream videos and so on. So without you, Olivier, the conference could not be online. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have now several thanks to say, and you will see also, while I am thanking people, some pictures behind the scene of this conference, because many things happened behind the scene, and you will see a lot of faces, there are not a lot of pictures, but you will discover some aspects, some moments of the behind the scene of the conference. So I want to thank the SPT for the partnership, the confidence, and such an enthusiastic and positive spirit in which we have worked together on the preparation of this conference. Thanks to the University of Technology of Compiègne for our fruitful collaboration in the organization of the conference. Thanks to our Catholic University of Lille, our Chancellor Patrick Scoffler, and our team of Vice-Chancellors for their trust and support all over these months of preparation works. Thanks to the region Hauts-de-France for the support they brought to our scientific and research activities. Thanks to our amazing keynote speakers, Bernadette Bensaud-Vincent, Sheila Jazanoff, Judith Sutz, Carl Mitcham, Deborah Johnson, and Peter, as well as all our chairs in plenary and parallel and panel session. I thank personally Alberto Romele for his key role in the early beginnings of these adventures. Finally, we want to thank all the people behind the scene which have been strongly involved on the on-site and remote organization of the conference. First of all, my colleague in my office and my colleague of every day this year on this project, Richard Lewis, who helped me so much and who was so insightful, clever, and very practical. And yeah, we couldn't have organized this conference without you too. So thank you so much, Richard, for all your engagement in this project with us. I want to thank all the organizing committee of this conference, and it would have been not possible to have this conference without this committee, for the friendliness inside this committee and their availability to meet every time, even the night if needed. So thank you to Xavier, Alain Lutz, Emanuele Clarizio, and you can join on the scene too. So come so that people also can see you. It's important. So thank you for having been in the organization committee. Thank you to the program committee that you can discover the people involved in the program committee on the website. The scientific committee also, you can see the names on the website. I won't mention them here, but they also were very present. Thank you to Géraldine Paulus, to Lucie Verwust, who were in the administrative tasks and so on, in the logistics, in relations with external partners and so on. Thank you to all the people during the conference that have played a role in the conference, in the Q&R and so on, in many different aspects. Tyler Reigelut, Laure Daubigny, Anna Lombert, Jessica Lombard, Gabrielle Dort, Christelle Didier, Claire Dulon, and I hope I forget nobody. I'm sorry if I have forgotten someone. I also want to thank our our IT services of the university, Jonathan Mozon, Antoine Gambino, Michael Zekatek, Quentin Patou, Thierry Sobanski, Fabien Ledoux, Vianney Delory, Anthony Santos. I want to thank our technical team for the plenary session, the guys that were behind the camera, and perhaps, I don't know, if they agree to come on the scene 10 seconds? Gregory, join us. And perhaps you represent Fred Lanchevin, who is still behind the computer, so that you can still see us, Gregory there, and Fred's behind the screen, and all the team of White Rabbit Pictures for their professionalism and also for having helped us to have this conference and to broadcast it online in the plenary times. And finally, I want to thank all our students, because behind the scene of the Zoom sessions times in plenary, in parallel sessions and in panel sessions, there were technical mediators, animators, and we hired students for student jobs, and they were very engaged in their role, and I want to thank them. Lina Daman, Cindy Belvaux, Charlotte Hagman, Adam El-Lamam, Yann Hernandez, Nicolas Mudry, Claire de Prester, Laura Tocino, Lola Velli, Karine Fatou, Savannah Calderon, Agathe Iver, Loma Dayot, Nishat Tasmin, Louis-Marie Dieudonné, et Jana Husson. So this was the team behind the scene, and finally I want to thank all of you, all the participants of this conference, and all your engagements during these 3 days. Bye-bye and see you